Okay.
So
Cool.
today we have Carrie Collins. She is a hara resistance stretching instructor, a pianist, and she is really an expert to many I would say to healing chronic pain from her own experience, and she's helping now her clients. So, Kari, thank you for coming, and let us delve immediately to your personal story. How did you become acquainted with this method?
It was 2003, many years ago. I was preparing for a recital, and my shoulders were really hurting a lot, and all sorts of pain, like neck pain, jaw pain. My arms were so tired I couldn't hold a book. Like we were singing in choir that every year they sing the Messiah at Christmas time, and we I couldn't hold the book without sharp pains in my elbow, and that I was having all sorts of issues. So we tried a lot of different bodywork modalities, and I just recognized at a certain point that I needed to balance my muscles. I came across an article actually about fascia, and I was having tight jaw (TMJ)
Yeah,
problems,
yeah, yeah.
and so I was looking up like how to heal TMJ naturally because it seemed ridiculous to just wear a mouth guard. Like, it didn't seem
Sure.
like it would do much. Yeah, it would save my teeth, but it wasn't. I needed the muscles
So
relaxed.
did you grind the teeth? You had bruxism?
Yeah, and it was just everything was very tight. My neck was really tight. I was getting really bad headaches all the time.
Wow.
And so of course, the dentist was like, buy this mouth guard. And I was like, oh, that's not really what I want to do. So I found an article about fascia, and I don't know who published it or when. It was 2003. Nobody was talking about fascia back then. And it said that fascia in like tight fascia in your quads could cause, tight muscles in your quads could cause that pull on your fascia all the way to your jaw. And it made a lot of sense to me because I had had horrible growing pains. And I remember when I was growing, my feet hurting so bad because everything was like pulling from the bottom. And
Yeah.
it like a bell went off, and I was like, oh my gosh, I need to stretch. I need to get balanced. And so I actually went on Craigslist and was looking for practitioners. This was in 2003, so Craigslist wasn't really dangerous back then. It was okay. It was a safe place to be. And I was in San Francisco, which is where it originated. So I don't even know if it had gone all over the world yet. But I found a listing online for he wasn't a Kihara practitioner at the time because it didn't exist, but he was doing resistance stretching, and he was just on the street from me. I think he was one of maybe 8 people who had ever been trained by Bob Cooley back in the
What's
early
his
days.
name?
Bjorn Holton.
How? Again?
Bjorn, Bjorn.
Ah, Bjorn. Yeah, I saw.
Bjorn. Yeah, Bjorn Holton. He's fantastic. And so I started seeing him. Um, I had done a big recital. I was just like at the end of my rope. So I went to see him, and I would say I had results immediately. I mean, after the first session, I was like, what is this? And after 2 or 3 sessions, I was actually in touch with Bob Cooley to be like, what do I need to do to learn all of this about. And at that point, he wasn't really training people unless they went to like basically live with him for a long time. He was like, you can come here for 6 months. And I was like, I don't really have that freedom.
So,
So anyway, I was seeing Bjorn. I was completely obsessed with this method because I just couldn't believe how great I felt. The headaches were gone. My flexibility, I mean, I never could touch my toes my whole life, even when I was a kid. And one day I just bent over and touched my toes that day. The headaches were gone. The jaw pain was gone. My neck pain was gone. The shoulders felt great. I mean, everything, even people were like, why do you look different? And I was like, I think because I'm stretching.
what other modalities did you try before?
I tried Alexander technique. I tried Feldenkrais, massage, yoga, Pilates,
Yeah.
physical therapy. I did, gosh, I mean, I had my past lives read. I had my chakras aligned. I mean, I was doing anything that anyone would throw at me. So
Mm.
I tried a lot of different things. And nothing really felt right to me. Nothing was giving me the results that I wanted. And then with this, it was so cool because I would go in and it was assisted stretching. So I would he actually stretched me on his dining room table in his small little studio apartment, but he put me on the table and I would lay there kind of like, I was very relaxed. So it wasn't like I was half asleep, but I didn't feel like I was working that hard. And the way the technique works is that he gives a little resistance and I push against him. So that's a little strength training. And then I continue resisting while he takes me into the stretch. And so you're really active and you feel really safe through the whole process.
Yeah.
So that was the big thing, is that I felt very much in control. It wasn't like going to a body worker where they were doing all kinds of stuff to me and I was not in control, or it was really painful.
You're not passive, you're also engaged in the
You're
process.
very engaged. Yeah, there's a lot of talking, there's a lot of questions, and how does this feel? What does this feel like? Are you okay? Back and forth. And then if something doesn't feel good or it's not working, you go somewhere. You go to a different muscle group and work on that. So it's not like you continue working on the thing that's painful, which is what a lot of body work is. Like you have this pain in your elbows, so they spend all this time working on your elbow until it doesn't hurt anymore for a short period of time, and then it comes back.
It can start. You're right. It can you have something here, and it can start from the big toe.
Exactly. So he was able to kind of search and destroy, basically, like take away the areas that weren't really working. But what was amazing to me is that I would leave there and I would feel completely aligned. Like my gait, like just walking, felt different. My arms felt open and longer. I could play the piano so much better because I had all that freedom. But even it was kind of amazing how, like, technically I was more accurate. I felt more focused. I just felt better all around. I slept better. I dealt with stress better. I mean, it was just a lot of benefits. I mean, just a euphoria. But then also I would be sore for a few days from the workout. And I was like, here I am working out. I don't break a sweat. I'm not breathing hard. I don't even feel like I'm working out. It just feels good. And then all of a sudden I had muscles. And that to me was also really appealing because, like, for me, being in that much pain wasn't helping. Like, it wasn't easy for me to go to the gym and work out. That was another thing I tried, working with a personal trainer, and that was not good. But also, like, I didn't have time for going to the gym every day. And I also, like, a lot of times people don't have that kind of energy to go to the gym. But if you're doing any resistance stretching method, you don't use a lot of oxygen to do the work. So it's accessible to everybody. So anyway, I just felt amazing.
It's actually aerobic if you do the forth and back, the resistance and the strengthening, the stretching and the strengthening
together. Yeah.
Is it becoming aerobic training?
It can be aerobic. It depends on how much resistance you use and how fast you work. I would say that we call it aerobic as, like, this is our title for when you do strength and stretch without stopping. And then you can break a sweat and you can, I mean, if you want to, but you don't have to. I mean, you can do it as easily as you want. So it's kind of tailored to, you can tailor it to what your body wants to do, basically. So, like, if you,
how does it work? How does it work? Because you say that it was hands-on. He put hands on you and he was resisting and you were stretching and vice and the other way.
Yeah.
The other direction. And when I look at your beautiful YouTube channel, it's all you mean you do it by your own.
Yeah.
So does it really matter if you have it?
I mean, there is a difference. There is a difference for sure. Assisted stretching is what he was doing on me. And that's what I do with my clients in here in Chicago. We do assisted stretching. I also do what we call self-stretching. So that's what's on the YouTube channel. And like, if I was doing a class or a workshop, it would be self-stretching. But assisted stretching is like a partner stretching technique where the client is, like, on the table or on the floor, and the practitioner is actually doing the stretching for them. And it's I would say about 10 times more effective than self-stretching. But that's not to discount that self-stretching isn't effective. It's incredibly effective. So assisted stretching just takes it above and beyond that. Part of the benefit is that as a practitioner, when I'm stretching somebody, I can really feel very specifically if their stretch is effective or it's not. And then I can do the problem solving accordingly. And then they don't have to use other parts of their body to resist. So it's really easy to isolate the muscle.
I see, yeah. And
Yeah.
so you became very enthusiastic about the
Yeah.
method.
It's an understatement. I became completely obsessed, I think is the right word. I have that kind of personality where if I find something that really fascinates me, I dive deep into it. I want to understand it completely, and I want to be as good as it. I want to be the best. Basically, I want to be the best at it.
You have a striving person, like you want
Yeah.
to deepen into it.
Yeah, and it's very pinpointed focus, so nothing can pull me away from it. So after I worked with Bjorn for about 4 months, I'd say 3 to 4 months, and I was seeing him every 2 weeks. So it wasn't like it was incredibly intensive work, but it changed my entire body. And then I moved from San Francisco to Chicago that winter. There were no trainers here, and there were no resources. I think Bob put out his book in 2005, so it was about another year and a half or so before I was able to get his book, and he put out a video at the same time. And I mean, they're just, we didn't even have, I don't even know if YouTube existed back then. There was nothing. So I was here and just like, really wanting to learn more and not really having the opportunity. So it wasn't until about 2007 when or maybe 2006, I'd say a little 2006. So I had a few years, maybe 2 years that I didn't stretch with anybody. My pain did not come back.
Wow.
That's pretty amazing. Yeah, because you would expect that it would. And I was still playing the piano and, still doing all the things that I was doing before. But that to me was pretty amazing, that without seeing the practitioner over and over again, sometimes you go to a chiropractor, or you go to yoga class, or you go to, or running or anything. And if you stop going, you lose the benefits.
Yeah.
But for this, I didn't lose the benefits. It never came back. So 2007, I was teaching piano a lot and starting to feel a little bit like I wanted to move more because I was sitting around a lot. And so I reached out to Ann and Steve, Ann Tierney and Steve Sierra are my mentors, and reached out to them, and I was like, how do I learn more? And they were like, well, surprise, somebody just got certified who lives close to you, like the weekend before. It's like, oh my gosh, it's meant to be. So I got in touch with him, and we started stretching once a week. Peter Merlin. He's in Boulder now, but he was great. He had just started his certification process, so he didn't know much, and I knew what I had learned before. So we'd pull out the manual and we'd go through the stretches, and I said, no, it goes like this, and we'd kind of, work through it. And before too long, he was like, why don't you stretch me too? So we started trading. And then before too long, we arranged a certification up here. So Ann and Steve came up and did the certification. And at that point, I was like 100% in. And I wanted to learn so much. Ann and Steve were stretching a swimmer named Dara Torres. And this was 2007. Yeah, you know about Dara. Dara is she did the Olympics 5 times. Oh, my lights just turned off. Sorry. They're on a timer. Let me turn those back on because there we go. Dara was 41. She just had a baby. When she was pregnant, she was having some morning sickness. So she decided to swim again because it helped. It made her feel better to be in the water. So she started swimming competitively and started winning competitions because she's, that's what she does. And she, eventually someone was like, why don't you try out for the Olympics? She qualified. So she just kept going with it. And so she knew Ann and Steve from before. I think she worked with Bob Cooley in 2000, I want to say, but I'm not sure about that. So She'd done resistance stretching before. So she had Ann and Steve move to Florida and work with her exclusive. And they helped her through the Olympic process. And which is pretty amazing because when you're in your 40s, your body doesn't respond to, well, it doesn't recover very fast. And for her to be able to swim at the level she needed to recover quickly so that she could do the workouts again, so she could swim again.
Did she suffer of chronic pain, of issues?
Mostly for her, it was tightness from swimming and just, tightness from being 40. Like that's, that's real. So I wouldn't say, she did have some shoulder issues. I think she had some knee issues. I can't remember, but it was mostly sports based. So that was.
Can you say something, because in your videos, you talk a lot about the fascia connection, and you just mentioned aging. So as we age, the fascia is drying. Actually, aging is dehydration of the body.
Yeah.
So the fascia really plays a role in the stiffness that old people feel. So how this hara resistance stretching helps the fascia become more pliable, more supple, more malleable? Can you say something about the connection to the fascia?
Yeah, sure. So basically what happens as we get older, like you said, the fascia kind of gets drier. And to explain kind of what fascia is to the rest of the world, it's kind of like a sticky mucus that's in our body that holds everything together, but also keeps everything apart. So it's connecting all of your muscular system. It's actually, there's an entire skin of fascia like underneath your skin. So if you dissected the body, you could see it's almost like the same person, but also your fascia is kind of like what holds your organs in place, but also keeps them from running into each other. And I like to think of it as like the gravity of your body. So because gravity is like keeps the planets in the place they're supposed to be, right? And then it's all this empty space around, but there's substance to that space that keeps everything together, but also keeps it apart so that like the earth doesn't run into the sun, right? So fascia is sort of like that. Well, when you get older, you've created a bunch of compensation patterns. Maybe you've had some injuries. Maybe you have a shoulder that does this now, or maybe you're a little hunched over. There's something happening, or maybe you sit a lot, maybe you drive a lot. Then you end up with fascial imbalances. Like maybe you have too much fascia here, or you have too much fascia in the front of your hips, or something.
A kind of thickening of the fascia, or adhesions of the fascia in certain places.
And then light in other places.
Yeah, and this restriction creates other parts.
Mm-hmm. And the thing is that fascia is like a mucus. So if you think of like what it's like when you have an allergy or cold or something and you have mucus in your nose, if it's healthy, it's very liquid and it's not runny, it doesn't go anywhere. It's just kind of like everything's moisturized. But if it gets too dry, it becomes like stuck. You might get a sinus infection or it's hard to get out. And your fascia is kind of like that. It's viscous. It's got a fluidity to it.
Yeah.
When you're younger, it flows easier. So maybe you're a little tight here, but you get up and kind of move it around and it starts to, it balances out really easily. As you get older, like you said, it's like a dehydration. So it can get sticky, it can get stuck. In my opinion, that's what frozen shoulder is that the fascia is so stuck that your shoulder freezes to your ribs and then it's hard to break that away.
So how hara helps this?
How does it help? Well, what we focus on is balance. So we are stretching, yes, but we're stretching in balance. So we're stretching the front to the back and the top to the bottom, and we're also stretching on diagonal angles. We tend to focus on the shoulders and the hips so that you loosen up here, you loosen up here, and that kind of like all works itself out along those lines. But as we're focusing on that balance, then we start to pull apart that fascia, bring some fluidity, some blood to the area, bring some liquid in there so that things can move around, but also just like releasing the fascia in a way. It's really kind of fascinating. The actual method of resistance stretching gets into the belly of the muscle and will actually pull the muscle fibers apart from the sarcomeres. So you're in the cells of the muscles, pulling them apart, where most traditional stretching methods would pull more from the tendons.
From the distal parts of the
Exactly. So we're actually stretching from a cellular level. When you add resistance, there's something very interesting that happens with the microfilaments inside the sarcomeres and stretches it from that place. So say your muscle is connected by sticky fascia in, or adhesions in the muscle or something within the muscle. Well, when we start pulling that apart, we can actually pull those knots apart. So we're pulling apart the fascia within the muscle. Now, on top of that, we can also stretch the fascial lines by just doing something as simple as, like, in the middle of a resistance stretch, reaching your hand really big like this, or reaching up, or twisting and turning. And when you do that, you can feel it right now. You stretch and you can feel that, even just wiggling your fingers, you feel how good that stretch feels.
Yes.
That's called pandiculation. Pandiculation really has that feeling of like,
like animals do.
Exactly.
Cats.
Yeah.
It's taken from the Thomas Hanna method, if you know the.
Is he the anatomy trains guy?
It's pandiculation. I think the person that invented the word was Thomas Hanna, who was a student of Feldenkrais, and
Interesting.
he was talking about, actually it's the same idea. For example, if you are tight in this SEM and in this muscle, you actually go and tighten more to let the brain know what it is doing. And then you pandiculate, then you move very slowly to reach the midline, but it is not something biomechanical. It is talking to your brain, talking to the nervous system to know where the midline is, where what it was doing, actually amplifying it. And then slowly and gradually you take it back this way. But this was in parentheses, like you were talking about the pandiculation of the, so you have to do it very slowly, no?
You do what your body feels like doing. That's the beauty of pandiculation. Is that there's no specific, like, go in this direction and then twist. Like, it's not really how pandiculation works. Like, if you just decide that you're going to stretch your neck and you reach across, and that's pandiculation, then you'll just automatically start following it. And it's kind of, I like to think of it like if you had a dry erase board and you're kind of erasing the tension, right? So when you pandiculate, you can kind of just, it's like you kind of want to wiggle into it a little bit. It's kind of like you're taking it off,
The way you say it, I think maybe someone has a sticky muscle here, like a stiffness here, but said before, it might start from the iliopsoas in the other side.
Exactly.
So it would be useless to stretch this, right? Am I right? Correct me.
Well, it depends on a lot of things. So, like, say you're going to stretch like that, and if I pull my head over this way, I feel my neck here, and that's good because that's where it's the longest, you see? Sometimes people feel it here, but that's the shortest. So it's not stretching because it's short, it's cramping up. There's an issue. So that tells me that I'm maybe not ready to stretch this one yet, that there's something else going on. And so then we kind of do a little map. You go on the map and on the hunt to find out where the solution is. And what's really funny is that the solution is usually in a place that feels great. Like, it's the muscle it's kind of usually the muscle that's getting in the way the most, that's causing the most problems, is the muscle that's the best at its job. So it's kind of like if you were playing basketball and you have 5 players on the team and 4 of the players are like 12 years old and the other one's Michael Jordan. Like, they're always going to throw the ball to him. He's going to win the game every time, but it's not balanced, right? It's not very balanced. And then the other 4 players never get good at the game. So but what Kihara does,
one muscle is working too much and the others are in vacation.
Yeah. And everybody always wants to know, like, okay, well, if my neck hurts, then what muscle's working too hard? I'm like, I don't know. That's dependent on your body and your experiences. And we all have such different life experiences. I mean, it could come from birth trauma, or how difficult it was for you to learn to walk, or if you fell off your bike, or if you had a car accident, or if you broke your heart, or, like there are so many variables to tightness in your body. And so no two people are the same.
So you were telling me before that, may I ask you, your clients, what kind of problems do they come with, and you find this method helpful, surprisingly?
Yeah,
I mean, beyond the chronic pain, beyond the musculoskeletal issues.
mm-hmm. Yeah, most people come to me in the beginning just knowing that they want stretching. They're like, oh, I need this or something, or they've been referred because they have a shoulder pain or they have this or that. But I've really found that it helps a lot of people who have chronic fatigue, people who have autoimmune disorders like fibromyalgia. It's really helpful for fibromyalgia, scleroderma, arthritis.
Really?
It's very helpful for a lot of these different things. I work with people who have had strokes. I work with people who've had Parkinson's. Just a lot of, a lot of times it's people who are in their later stage of life, maybe, I do get a handful of like middle-aged 40 to 60 who want to stay active, but then I get people who are in that like 60 to 80s years who were active in their younger life and are now suffering from problems, and want to, strokes, Parkinson's, those are some of the big ones. Some people are dealing with like heart issues or, that sort of thing. So they can't really work out like they want to, but they still want to stay active. They still want to stay balanced. So I can help them with that.
So, this makes me curious, like things like scleroderma or arthritis, there are already deformations that are created because of let's take arthritis. Many people develop osteophytes, like the little spurs on the joints, ossifications. Could this method reverse it? If you balance the body,
There are theories about it, but they are only theories. So it's hard for me to say, but I can tell you what I think. And then I don't know that there's any firm research on this. So take it all with a grain of salt. But the theory that I've heard is that when there is a calcification on the bone, it's most likely because there's something grinding, right? There's a reason for that calcification. So if you can bring the body into better balance, then it's possible that the bone won't rub in that place anymore. And then if they don't rub in that place anymore, then you actually allow that calcification to heal and the body will naturally go in and reabsorb it. So it's
wow.
The analogy that I give is like it's kind of like if you had a blister on, like you get a new pair of shoes and the shoes rubbing on your foot, you get a blister. And then if you continue wearing those shoes through the season, you're going to have a calcification or you're going to have a callus. That's the word. You're going to have a callus that protects you so that if it does rub, you're not hurting yourself anymore. And then when you stop wearing the shoes, then that goes away. And then the next year, if you wear them again, you have to rebuild the,
So regarding the autoimmune issues, which many people suffer of, scleroderma can be
scleroderma is terribly difficult.
Yeah, even especially if it is internal. But let's even take that someone is lucky and he has scleroderma in his outer.
Exactly. Yeah.
So if it is already ossified, did you see that the person got better, improved, even healed after aligning the body to the middle line?
Yeah, I mean, I can't, obviously, like scleroderma is not going to reverse itself, it's there. But what I found is that the technique actually helps to slow down flare-ups and also to just give some relief, Also, some of my patients who have, or some of my clients who have scleroderma, they really respond well to something. We have a technique called mashing where we use our feet. I don't know if you've seen videos of this before, but
tell me about it.
Yeah, it's taken out of Thai massage and shiatsu, and we've kind of developed our own form of soft tissue work. It's not technically massage, but it feels sort of like it. And my scleroderma patients, they can do, if they go get a massage, they flare up. It doesn't help them. But for some reason, mashing doesn't flare them up. So they find that to be very, very helpful.
How it is
That
called, the method,
we
mashing?
call it mashing. Yeah, it's not a technical term. It's mashing because it's kind of, we're like mashing the muscles. It's
Yeah,
almost like, you know, when you knead bread, it's
yeah, yeah,
kind of like
yeah.
that, but we use our feet and we kind of
But actually it makes sense because you mentioned that the fascia is beneath the skin. So
mhm,
if you move it and improves the circulation to it,
exactly. Yeah,
then
yeah,
and align it better.
yeah.
What is the
And also,
importance?
there's something also to physical touch and your parasympathetic nervous system. So, anytime that anyone has autoimmune conditions, stress is a huge factor. And being able to get them in a place of rest and digest, and a place where they feel really calm and relaxed, is crucial. So the mashing, the stretching, the even breathing exercises or things like affirmations can help to pull them down out of fight or flight mode. And when you're in that state, you're less likely to have flare ups.
Do you believe that staying in the parasympathetic realm, if someone can train himself to be there,
To be in the protective place.
yeah, we need
Yeah.
both. We need both. But if someone is in chronic stress and is constantly in the fight, fight, freeze mode,
Mhm.
if he will train himself, whether it's with meditation or resistance stretching or affirmations or even like you said, if he reaches the even despair sometimes can lead someone to like to give up, but to give up in the to surrender actually.
Yeah, to surrender a bit. Yeah, it's not as an easy process as we all want it to be. Like we want to be able to say, I'm in fight or flight, and if I listen to this recording of affirmations, that I'm going to come out of it not in fight or flight anymore. It's not always that easy. And the reason why is because our body's protective mechanism is not part of our conscious mind. It's actually very survivalist. It's like our animal mind. So if you're in fight or flight mode, it's
More
with
primal,
us.
more primal, more basic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We've got one of the cats here. They like to be in the bookshelf. So yeah, it's more primal. So when your body has reacted to some sort of response, like maybe like none of us are tight without reason. Like it's not like you're not born that way typically. I mean, you could be, but most of the time we're tight because we've dealt with some sort of trauma. And so your body is protecting you against that traumatic thing that's happened, maybe multiple traumatic things, and they might not feel like trauma. Because sometimes, when I think back on my life, I'm like, well, I haven't had any massive traumas, but I've had a lot of little things that over time, he's just discovered he can jump up on the shelf. This is a big deal. Um, so a lot of times we have these like small traumas that keep building up over time. And as they do, we start to build up armor so that we are protected against these traumas. And sometimes the traumas, like I said before, are physical traumas, but a lot of times they're emotional traumas. And the worst, I don't want to say the worst case, but kind of like the big whammy is when you have a physical trauma that's compounded with emotional trauma. Like maybe you were in a car accident, but then that car accident, someone got very seriously hurt or passed away, and then you're dealing with the emotional trauma that happened after that fact.
Mm.
So we really build up emotional armor around all of these things. So there's kind of like a mind down and body up process that needs to happen when you're dealing with physical trauma. And part of that is,
you know what? This is what I like about your method. Many people, even if they developed an emotional armoring, and bracing, emotionally bracing, and which manifests as physical, clench and crunch.
Mhm.
Many people do not know how to access their emotions. Again,
Yeah.
as a protection, they cannot get in touch with their sorrow and
Mhm.
the fears and the flashbacks. So having a method which is physical, which is, as you said, when you find the midline, then not only the body and the muscle relaxes, but also the mind relaxes.
Exactly.
It's
Yeah.
a down-to-earth tool,
Mhm.
uh,
Yeah.
which is more tangible to people with emotional trauma. Do
Well,
you?
and sometimes people don't want to, there are people who really love to face their emotional trauma from a mental standpoint. I'm one of them. I can journal like crazy, therapy, all the things, but you can't think your body out of being tight if it's protecting you because your muscles don't come from that place. So if you still don't feel safe or if you still feel traumatized deep in your muscles, then you have to find a way to get your muscles to relax. And then that surrendering that's happening up here is also happening in here at the same time, and they kind of come to an equilibrium. So there has to be a place of surrender in your body. And the only way I know how to do it is resistance stretching. I mean, you can meditate and try to relax all your muscles, and maybe you can hold that space for a little bit of time, but you don't hold it when you're at the grocery store or when you're driving in your car or when you're out doing something fun even. Like your body will kind of go back to its armor.
Let
So
me
learning
share
how to
with
release
you
that.
regarding this. I want to share with you something that happened to me doing the playlist that you give in your YouTube channel. I have a tendency to, I am aware to the asymmetries in my body. I have a tendency to extend the left back, lower back.
Mm-hmm.
Not to a degree of pain, but it is more extended in relationship to the right. And when I lie on the floor, I feel that it is heightened, this area.
Mm-hmm.
And after doing a series of, you have in your 101 online course,
Uh-huh.
you give the first lesson generously, you give it free. So
Yes.
after I did the lesson, in a mysterious way, I felt like the left side was even flatter than the
Then the right. Is that funny? Yeah.
like
Yeah.
it was really yielding to the floor.
Mm-hmm.
This amazed me. How,
That's a really beautiful thing.
how
Yeah.
it happened.
How
How
does it happen? I know it still baffles me, to be honest, that it works so well.
yeah.
I can't even tell you how much I think this is part of why I love this system even after, I mean, it's been almost 20 years now that I've been 15 years that I've been doing this. And I see clients and I'm like, I can't believe that just worked. Like, I can't believe it works, but it does every time. It keeps me engaged. But really what ends up happening is that as you're doing resistance stretching, we're balancing everything out within your body, but also recreating those neuromuscular connections so that it holds. And then when you come back to it, and it can really happen within 20 minutes. I mean, I think that first video it's probably 15 minutes of stretching, and the rest of it's breathing, affirmations, and meditation. It's a small amount of stretching. And even in 101, that first video is not a lot of it's
No.
not a lot of resistance stretching even. It's just basic movement. And so when you get into that pattern, your body's in a calm state, you're doing a little bit of resistance stretching, you really feel more balanced because you are more balanced, and that carries itself.
So this leads me to the other question. How come that you don't go to the old patterns after I'm sure that many people would go to the
Mhm.
habitual
After they're
patterns that mess their body, but
yeah.
they feel safe there. We say you don't smell the shit in the farm.
Right.
Someone is growing in the farm, he really doesn't smell the smell.
Yeah, yeah.
He's
Right.
he's habituated there, and he lives there. So this
So
is
how
This
Yeah, how does
is the new normal for him,
Mhm.
the new natural thing to him.
Yeah. Well, what ends up happening over the course of life is that you end up with these patterns because maybe you hurt yourself and then your body says, well, when I did that before, it hurt, so I'm not going to do that anymore. So instead of now having like this full range of motion or being able to raise your arm over your head, you can only go so far, or you bend your elbow to do it, or you don't have the same you don't have the same range of motion because your body doesn't think you're safe in that range of motion. With resistance stretching, because you're resisting through that motion and you're only stretching as far as you can continue to resist, that means that the muscles engaged that you could come out of that at any point in time.
Yeah,
So
so
you're always in a protective place. Your body is constantly being reaffirmed that it's strong in this range of motion and that it can get out. So if as you're building
it's
your
safe to be there. Again, the safety.
you're safe, yeah. There's a type of resistance stretching called PNF, which is proprioceptive
Yeah,
neuromuscular facilitation. The reason I bring that up is because of the name. Proprioception is where you are in space. Neuromuscular is your brain and your muscles, right? And facilitation, like it's easier. So you have, with resistance stretching, you're getting a little bit of that proprioceptive reinforcement with your muscles in your brain. So if I do a resistance stretch and pull my arm back this way, and that would mean that I'm pushing maybe against a wall or something with the muscle engaged. I'm engaged the whole time, so I can always push back. Then I've reinforced that I have this range of motion that I'm safe in, and it resets. So maybe you went a little bit further than you thought you could because you can resist and everything's fine. Or maybe we've done some problem solving where I've removed some barriers, right? Because you might have barriers in the back of your shoulder, which we can also remove through resistance stretching. So if I remove the muscles, remove the barriers in the back, like take out those adhesions and those tightnesses, then when I come back this way, there's more freedom to pull back here. Then all of a sudden I can resist in a deeper range of motion. I know I'm safe. I know there's not going to be pain there. And then you've reinforced the balance and your range of motion. So you've taken away a substantial amount of fear that your body was holding.
Yeah, you move in the safe zone.
Exactly.
And
The more you do resistance stretching, the bigger your safe zone gets.
yeah,
You're stronger in that range. So it's like, it's not just stretching. I think people, because it's called resistance stretching, people have this idea that, well, it's stretching, I know how to stretch. But this is so different in the sense that you're actually building strength, and sometimes even more strength than you would if you were lifting weights.
I think you explained it very well when you said before that the stretching here is coming from the belly of the muscles and not from the ends. So
Yeah.
if you pull it from the tendons and the tendons in the distal parts of the muscle, the brain might feel in danger.
Yes. Well, that's what the stretch response is. What people think a stretch feels like is that end of the stretch where your tendons are pulling. They think that's what stretching is supposed to feel like, and they think that that's a good thing. But really, that's a pain response. Your body's trying to tell you, like, hey, don't go any further. You're going to hurt yourself. That's what most people think stretching feels like. When you do a resistance stretch, you don't feel that until you get to the very end. Then you know it's time to stop. But during this stretch, the whole time, which is when the actual stretch is happening, because you've grabbed it at the beginning and then you're pulling, right? So the stretch is happening the whole time. Then it feels like a warm tug. You feel the actual muscle warm the whole time, which feels really good.
Exactly. Yeah, I felt it. I felt the warmth and the expansion because of the warmth. Something is expanding.
Exactly.
So I want to ask you now, as an expert, some technical questions regarding the hara resistance stretching. When people are becoming very aware to their asymmetry in the body, and you know, in your assessment video, you mentioned yourself that you feel that one side is scored 24, while the other side scored 5. And so let's take an example. If someone is feeling his belly muscles in the right side kicking because he's right-handed. So, you know, when we are right-handed, the belly muscles also tend to, we are living more in our right side rather than on the left. So for example, I'm curious to know now when you are sitting, are you aware to the weight of your body? Is it more on the left sit bone or more on the right sit bone? Because you can go lunatic with all these cues that are coming. You can become overwhelmed by the proprioception. That,
Yeah, yeah. I
that
mean, most of the time we ignore it, right? But when I sit here and think about it, I'm resting my elbows on my table. I've got my legs crossed. My right foot's resting on the floor on the leg of the table. My left foot's stable. So I don't have that much weight on my hips, actually. And I feel a little tension in my back here. I feel a little bit of tension in my hip flexors. Like when you really pay attention to it, you can feel now a little bit here. I can feel that. Like the more you pay attention to it, the more you can feel it. But most of the time, we're so concentrated on other things that we're not paying attention
that's
to
right.
exactly what we're
So
doing.
suppose the right belly is the right abdominals are activated and tonified. Like every movement that you do, you start from there. And the left side of the belly went to vacation. It
Yeah.
doesn't do anything, it doesn't activate.
Uh-huh.
How would you balance it with the resistance stretching? It's very proximal, it's very near you.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you are doing resistance stretching with the you know with the limbs or even with the head, you have more freedom to move and resist. But how do you do it when it comes to the torso, to the rib
The
cage?
torso. Yeah, yeah. It's interesting because we don't do a lot of torso stretching. We do mainly because the muscles that we are able to access from the shoulders and from the hips will get there. So like if I'm stretching the psoas muscle, I'm getting deep into the abdominals. If I'm stretching the quads, I'm getting into the abdominal fascia. And even sometimes with the quads, I can do kind of a back bend and get a little bit of a stretch through my abdomen. If I'm stretching my shoulders, say I'm going down this way, I can get a stretch through my lats, which goes all the way down to my hips. So there are a lot of different stretches that way, but by using your limbs, by using your shoulders and your hips. So I'll show you that one really quick because it's a nice one. If we do any bigger stretches, I'll just go into the other room. But so you hold your elbow with one hand and resist.
Yeah,
Well, there, resist like you're trying to pull apart like this, and
yeah.
then with your hips sitting square on your chair, maybe feet flat on the floor, then you just pull towards your opposite knee. So this is my left shoulder and I'm pulling towards my right knee. I think for you it's probably the opposite.
Yeah.
And then you push back up. So you're resisting the whole time and just pulling back and forth like this. So you can feel how that stretches your back. If everything's balanced correctly, you would feel it all through here. If you're having some imbalances, then it might come here, or you might feel it in your rotator cuff, kind of in the back of your shoulder. So that would mean that there were other things to stretch. And so, sometimes people want to access a certain area of their body, but there's a reason why it's not working. And it's most likely a compensation pattern somewhere else. It's hard for people to understand that they can't stretch their lower back because they have a limitation in the top of their shoulder. But it's true, like even an interesting one, people have neck pain like through here, and we stretch the arm to get rid of that neck pain this way. But if people are tight here, and
Yes,
these muscles, like tight muscles won't allow you to fold. And that's something that people don't understand. They think that tight muscles, yeah, tight muscles aren't just that you can't stretch, but a tight muscle won't contract all the way either. It
oh
just is
my
kind of,
God, this is novelty. Yeah.
yeah. So
Wow.
if this muscle's tight, you are constantly holding your arm up because you can't fold it to let it relax. And
Oh,
that will cause neck pain. So all the
so
people are
what
always,
is the solution? This is something very typical to many people that one side of the rib cage is more knitted, more condensed.
yeah.
What would you do if this is already very tightened? How would you unravel it?
Well, there's a pattern to it. So I need to focus on the areas of how that joint moves, right? So if I want to stretch, this was a stretch we were just doing, this one where you pull over here. Now, if you don't feel that stretch here, then I would say, okay, well, let's look at some of the other patterns, some of the things that may be blocking. So you'd have to be able to let your arm come up this way. So that would be up here. So then what we would do instead of like trying to force it into that position or trying to find a modification to get there, we would just stretch the deltoid. So we do a resistance stretch here, which seems very detached from what we just did, but effective. And then I would also stretch the rotator cuff, which maybe I would do we do like a figure eight like this. And that would stretch the rotator cuff. So what I'm doing here is I'm trying to pull my arms apart like this, and then just kind of looping around. So this stretches the back of the shoulder. And then just after doing those two other stretches, if you go back to this one, it's noticeably different for most people.
Oh, so
Do you feel it? Yeah.
yeah, it feels good to stretch for stretchaholics.
Right. We love it. But I mean, it's kind of amazing that when something's not working properly, that there's actually a pretty quick fix for it. And that's what I try to train people to do in the assessment, is to see, I have an assessment where you watch the video and then I tell you what you're supposed to feel, and then you score it based off of a 0 to 10 scale, 0 being the best because there's no limits, and 10 being a lot of limits. And 10 is that you're not going to do that stretch at all. Like, it hurts, I'm not doing this. And working down to like, maybe I feel a cramp, or maybe I feel a dull pain, or there could be a sharp pain, or maybe you feel nothing at all. Those are all valid things, but listening to your muscles and what they're trying to say to you through those pain. I mean, pain is not just a way to get you to stop doing something. I mean, that it is ultimately what happens, is that you stop doing something, or pain isn't just an injury response, but pain is your body trying to communicate with you.
Of course. Can you show an exercise for the palm, from the hand, from the...
Oh, yeah. This is one of my favorites. So I just put my hands kind of like in a prayer pose like this. And for some people, their wrists are tight, so you don't have to be even up that high. And then I have my hands open like this. And then all you do is you push your fingertips together to make a round ball, and then keep pushing your fingertips together as you open up. And as I open here, I'm really getting my fingers as wide as I can until your palms are together, with resistance the whole time. So it's the tension. And then you can pull down so that you get a flatter wrist that way. And then sometimes from here, I like to go forward.
This is stretching, no?
Yeah, you feel it, yeah?
This is stretching, but where is the resistance? In the fingertips?
In the fingers, yeah. So you're pushing your fingers. So like they would like fall apart so I've really got a lot of tension between. See how white my knuckles are? I'm really pushing my fingertips together.
Yes.
And so opening into the ball and then coming into this stretch. Now, here's where this is interesting. You should feel this within your hands, maybe through here in your forearms on the bottom here. Sometimes people will feel it up here. And that's because there's an imbalance on the extensors. So you would have to go the other direction. So what I do is I hold my hand like this, and it's gentle. I push up. And then I'm going to use my top hand to gently push me down. And you feel that on the top, maybe through here, maybe up through here even. And if you do that 5 or 6 times, just kind of, working that tension out, because every time you might catch a little something different, because it's not just thinking of stretching, but you think like you're pulling things apart, you're starting to loosen up that fascia. Then if you go back to this one again, you may notice that it's a little easier on that side.
Yeah, it's not difficult to stretch. I think that many people, pianists and people who do gardeners or people who do fine motor skills, they have more issues of strength than elasticity. They are weak. And this brings me to another questions about hypermobile people. People who are overly stretch, like a nylon bag that that is not bouncing back to the original, like a spring. You know, many people would describe one of the rib cage is pulled like a spring which forgot how to bounce back.
Yeah.
And while the other side is a spring that was condensed and doesn't know how to open.
Yeah. Yeah.
What would you tell them? How would you correct this asymmetry?
Well, for the rib cage, I mean, that could be a condition. I mean, it could be coming from scoliosis, which is typically where you would see the extended rib cage and the crushed rib cage, is because there's a spinal twist and the muscles are pulling in that way because the spine has a little bit of an S curve. That typically I would work on the lower body, specifically the psoas muscle, and then getting the lower body adjusted in the right way so that everything's talking to each other, and the psoas can help because the psoas kind of controls the twist of the spine. Then if you can release the psoas to get it working properly, for those who don't know, the psoas it comes up here through your abdomen and comes down into your hips and connects your upper body to your legs. I like to work on the foundation first, because and the foundation being the hips, because if your hips are solid, then your legs are working in the right way, and then everything else tends to kind of shimmy back into place. But then
many people don't know if a tight psoas is a tight psoas. Does it mean that it is weak or too strong? Like
both. And it's a funny thing to say, but a tight psoas would be stuck, right? So it doesn't have the ability to contract, but it also doesn't have the ability to stretch. It's just in one place. So that being said, it would be strong within the range of motion that it has, but it can only be strong this much and it can only stretch this much.
So I think the psoas works in tandem with the opposite QL.
Yes, I agree. And also with the hamstrings. So the QL, I always think of the QL as being like the hamstrings of the upper body. Oh. So you have to balance the hamstrings. If your hamstrings are pulled too tight, then your psoas is going to be too loose, and the QL is going to be stretched out and tight.
And if the hamstring is too weak, too loose,
then the QL is most likely going to constrict, and then the psoas is also going to be too tight. So I see it a lot actually in people, like you said, who are hypermobile, and also people who stretch too much. So like people who are doing extensive amounts of yoga where their hamstrings are so loose that they have trouble contracting their hamstrings again. They end up being pretty tight through their psoas muscle because their body's just trying to find equilibrium. Mm-hmm. And also issues with the QL too. Hypermobility in itself is a total other side of the equation, but they're kind of two sides of the same coin. So I actually have clients who are hypermobile who come to me not to be more flexible, but to be less flexible.
Exactly.
And yeah, so
do you work with them more on strengthening, on the part of the strengthening, or both directions?
It's actually both, and this is really interesting that resistance stretching. You asked earlier when we were talking, you asked about how you balance, like, do you do more strength on this side because it's weaker, and do you do more flexibility on this side because it's stronger, or do you try to balance that out? And no, it's because the way the brain is responding to the muscles, what we're doing is trying to find that equilibrium. And then when your body's in equilibrium, which means that your brain and the muscle that it's supposed to be talking to are communicating properly.
Exactly.
That your brain's not sending the signal somewhere else, or that there's no confusion.
How do you reach this phase of communication without discrepancies, with that the body, the muscles are
aligned like that? Yeah, it's just, you just do the resistance stretching. Like, it's so simple. And sometimes it's a problem solving thing where you find that there's a muscle that's not quite working properly, and then you find like on my channel, I have all these problem solving videos for all the different muscles. So say you're doing a psoas stretch and you don't feel the psoas in the stretch, because in resistance stretching, you can feel that warmth of the stretch. If you don't feel the stretch, or if you feel it somewhere where you're not supposed to feel it, then you know that you need to do problem solving. So you go to the problem solving video, to the formula, or if you're with a trainer, or, you know, once you learn the method, then you can do it yourself. You do a couple different things. Like for the psoas, I would stretch my hamstrings. I would stretch my glutes, because sometimes the glutes can take over for the psoas. And I would probably stretch some, like maybe my chest too, just to do some upper body, just to kind of cover
everything is compensating. You can really get lost, because if you will stretch the hamstrings, they will also be different in both sides, and then
and this is where it gets a little frustrating in the beginning, because your body, especially if you're dealing with chronic pain or trauma in your body, then your body has a lot of compensation patterns, but there's always one. I've never, ever found a client who doesn't have one muscle that's working properly. And it's an upper body, lower body thing. So I'll find one muscle that's like totally working perfect in the lower body, sometimes working perfect in the upper body. I have had clients, remember, I've been doing this 15 years. I'd say maybe 2 or 3 total ever, where they had no muscles working properly in their lower body. And then when I found the ones that were working in the upper body and got them balanced out, then the lower body all worked perfect.
So you go to the muscles that works properly, and this would be the magic bullet, like you.
It is the magic bullet, yeah. When you resistance stretch the muscle that wants to be stretched the most, then it surrenders, right? That's the one that's protecting you the most. It needs stretched the most, right? Because it's working the hardest. So and it's not painful. It feels great. You're usually like, oh, this is the greatest thing of my life, because your body's communicating with you, right? And when your body feels a good stretch.
It's a mystery. If you feel tightness, you never know if it is a weak muscle or a too short muscle or a compensation on how do you detect? How it's like a detective. You said it's a map.
Yeah.
How do you do it in your clinic? How do you make the detective work?
Yeah, it's basically, I mean, there are a lot of different cues that I can get. So there's a lot of variations to what you can feel. Like I said, it can be a great stretch. It could be a great stretch, but in the wrong muscle. So that would be a no. It could be a dull pain. It could be a cramp somewhere. It could be that we're doing a stretch and the person says, you know, I really feel my toe. What's that? Or maybe they're doing a stretch and they start to feel nauseous, or they do a stretch and they feel like they're going to fall over, or they feel dizzy or something. That's a clear sign. It's your body trying to get out of the stretch. So anytime you feel pain, discomfort, frustration, anger, sadness, anything, your body's trying to get you to do something different. Which, if you think about real life, if you were carrying your groceries home and your arm started to feel fatigued or tired, you would switch hands.
Right.
Like, that's just your natural thing, is that if your body gives you a signal that you don't want to do that, then you just do something different. So it's the same thing in the clinic. Like, if I am doing a stretch on somebody and it doesn't feel right to me or to them, I just switch and do something different. And as I'm doing all the stretches, eventually I'll find one, and hopefully it's more than one. You know, it's usually I do 8 stretches in the legs, and so that kind of covers all the balances of the hips,
all the meridians.
Exactly. So if I'm stretching, say I test out 2 or 3, and then by the 4th stretch I feel one that feels really good, then I'll continue doing that stretch for about 10 repetitions, somewhere between 5 and 10, depending on who the client is and what they need. And then from there, I'll start to unlock everything else. So the ones that I skipped, I can go back to and they'll work properly, because I've removed the barrier that was there before. And that's typically the stretch that feels the best. It's the one that's usually in the way. So for instance, if I was stretching the groin muscle, which is like a butterfly stretch,
yes,
and they felt it in their glutes or their hamstring, or maybe in the outside of their hip, if I stretch the hamstrings first, then that barrier is removed. So
Ah,
then when they go to stretch the groin, when they open their legs up, there's no barrier in the back that's stuck.
especially in the lateral side or in the
Yeah,
glute. Like
yeah.
the
Another good example.
external rotators are not too tight. No, no, the internal rotators are not too tight. You actually stretch the hip capsule, the posterior hip capsule of the hip joint, and then it can lengthen naturally. This is what
Yeah,
you
because remember too that flexibility isn't always about stretching, it's about being able to shorten. So being able to open your legs in that butterfly position is dependent on you being able to shorten the muscles here so that it can fold to that point.
when you do the groin butterfly and the client tells you, I don't feel symmetry between the right and the left. I feel that one side is too tight and the other one is. Would you tell him to go on and like be careful, be in the safe zone, but do it nevertheless in a symmetrical way so the body would learn to balance itself, or would you do it differently?
I would do it different. First, I would start with it. So if I notice, like I'm stretching the groin again, and this is if these were my legs or the person's legs, if they're opening like this,
Mm-hmm.
or they're not able to resist properly, that this side feels too weak or this side feels too strong, I would go to that opposite muscle group and work on those, because it's possible that this side's not opening because this muscle's tight. It may have nothing to do with the groin muscle at all. It might have to do with the balance here. And so, or this one might be too loose because there's something wrong here, or because it's compensating with the quads. Like it might be the quads. Because for instance, if I lift my leg like this, which is basically the groin stretch, if I lift it this
Yes,
way,
yes.
I can use my groin here, but I can also use my quad and pick it up like this. And it
Aha.
looks the exact same, right? So it's just a very small compensating pattern that it's visually not even apparent, which is why this is so important in so many ways. Because if you go to a class, a fitness class, or I mean, even some of the like Pilates is such an amazing method, and the instructors are watching you like a hawk, but they can't see that. Those little imbalances they're impossible to see. But in a resistance stretch, you can feel it. So you know if you're doing it right or wrong.
Yeah, you get the control back to your hands.
Yeah.
And
So what I would do is I would resist and stretch the lateral hamstring. I would resist and stretch the quads also, just to be sure there's no compensating. And then what happens is this one that was blocked by the lateral hamstring, now that that's able to shorten, can open up. This one that was weak because the quad was trying to do the work, but it couldn't push in that direction. The quad's not involved anymore, so the groin muscle can start to activate, and then they're balanced. Does that make sense?
yeah, it makes sense. So, last question, last technical question. The activation of the muscle, can you talk about it? How it is different from what we call to strengthen the muscles?
Sure, yeah. Because so many times we think of strength training as being strong, right? So being able to lift a weight or being able to, do some activity. Say, if you were trying to lift a weight, and say you were trying to do a bench press like this, I can do the bench press here and activate my pecs so that they squeeze in, but I can also do the bench press using my shoulders in the back here. And so sometimes people do a bench press and they'll feel their traps in the back. Their neck will get stiff. Or you see people who do push-ups all day long and they have no pecs, but their neck's like, it's because they're compensating, right?
Yes.
So a lot of times people think that strength is your ability to lift a lot of weight, but a lot of times being able to lift a lot of weight is being able to recruit a lot more muscle than the one muscle that you're trying to target.
I see.
So strength training from a gym perspective is a little bit different than how we would define strength in like a clinical setting. Strength technically is allowing the muscle to go from long to short. So it's that contracting, right? So that's strength. So we want to be able to isolate that one very specific muscle. Now, when you can't activate just that one very specific muscle, it means that you're compensating or
I
recruiting.
see.
So,
Wow. Thank you.
yeah,
This
does
makes
that?
it clear. Yeah, so actually it's about accuracy. Your method is about pinpointing accurately where the unactivated muscle is and
Yeah.
reaching
And I mean,
it.
if you're trying to do, like, say you're in the gym and you're trying to do a workout where you're really targeting your pecs, but you have to recruit so many different things to be able to lift that weight, then you're actually doing something very inefficiently. You're using a lot more energy than you need to do an exercise.
Yeah, it's not
And you're
efficient.
It's not efficient. And really, like, as we get older, like, children are very efficient. Their bodies are amazingly efficient. As we get older, we lose that efficiency and we start adding extra things on. It's like different, more layers. I like to compare it to like an onion. We've just added layers and layers of the onion to help us to just get through daily life, just to hold yourself up straight, right? We need just to walk down the street, you need compensation patterns. I mean, even somebody who, like, one of the markers of aging is, well, what people consider, like, you look at somebody and you're like, oh, that person's old, is that they don't walk fluidly, right? They shuffle their step, they maybe have a little bit of a limp, they need a cane. Like, being able to move fluidly is a very efficient thing. But when you have compensation patterns, it's really hard to do. So you start a little limping, a little, this
Shuffling and
yeah. And so bringing your body into that balance, getting your muscles activated in a very balanced way, which you can do through resistance stretching. So that means that when I call on my quads, they're working. When I call on this hamstring, it works. When I call on the other hamstring, it works for the exact job that it's made to do, and not anybody else's job, right? And not turning off when it's not supposed to turn off, but working efficiently. Then all of a sudden you can move really easily. You
so
can walk.
in the key hara, is it very methodically taught as a practitioner, as an
Yeah.
instructor? Did you learn to pinpoint these muscles and teach it how to be activated?
Yes.
Ah,
Yeah. So part of our certification process is, of course, learning how to do the moves, like learning how to do the stretches and learning how to teach them and, how to work
yeah.
with clients and that sort of thing. But a huge portion of it is on this problem solving, how to determine whether a muscle is, what it feels like as a practitioner to know whether it's working or not, how to work with clients, like in a class situation or when they're doing self-stretching, how to instruct them on how to basically translate what their body is saying to them. So if I'm in a class setting, someone will say to me, I'll go through and ask every single person, what do you feel in class? What does that feel like? What does that feel like? And people are like, you're asking me again? Like, I'm going to ask every time. So, and they'll say to me, oh, I feel it here. I feel it here. I feel it here. And I'll tell that person, okay, you stop doing that stretch, do the other one. You stop doing this stretch your quads. Stop doing this stretch your hamstring. And everybody will be doing different things in class.
I see. Wow.
It's really
So
fun.
your last word to people who are suffering now and hear you, people with chronic pain, and which sometimes lead, to more tension and contractions in internal organs. It can really escalate very badly.
Mm-hmm.
So someone who as you said, reached the end of his rope and he lost hope. And he tried, like you, many modalities, and he's frustrated because he doesn't feel free and he doesn't feel good under his skin. What would you tell him?
The number one thing is to put time into helping your body feel safe. I think we do so many therapies in search for answers that are more traumatizing for our bodies than they need to be. And that, even moving, and you can do a resistance stretch with minimal resistance and this much movement and make so many gains, way more than you could if you took your body to a place of pain. So it's so important. The bottom line of progress is to feel safe in your own body. And when your muscles feel safe, then they'll start to release. They'll start to let go.
Wow. And how do you reach this state of safety for the muscles? What is the tip to go there?
take it easy.
Make it easy.
Take it easy. One of the biggest pieces of advice that I give to my clients who are in chronic pain is to take what they think they're supposed to do and do it at 10%.
Wow.
Yeah, do it at 10%. 10% range of motion, 10% effort. I think we can be so driven to
Driving
kill
very,
ourselves
very
that
hard.
we end up being more abusive to ourselves than we should be. So taking it easy like that, you still do the workout, you still do it, but smaller, do it smaller. And listening to your body in a way that that you feel good. Like I was working with someone the other day who has massive pain in her SI joint. And we would do the stretches, and it might be something as simple as, okay, if you lean forward a little bit, then that pain is gone. And then you can do the stretch this much. And that's it. And then she could feel the stretch in a good way. But just finding the place where you feel really safe is the most important thing. Stretching doesn't have to hurt. It's not supposed to hurt. Moving your body is not supposed to hurt. Getting therapy is not supposed to hurt. If anything hurts, then it's just putting your body into more fight or flight mode.
Yeah,
And so
this is why physiotherapy doesn't help many times. Or
for a lot of people, yeah. And I think so many times we know that we're with an expert. We know that we're with somebody who has done tons of education and knows what they're doing, but we don't want to challenge them. We don't want to say, hey, this hurts, this doesn't feel right. But they don't know what your body is feeling. And if you don't tell them, they're not going to be able to respond accordingly. So listening to your own body and knowing what's safe and what's not safe is huge. It's huge. So then you're able to tell the practitioner that's too much, or you're able to tell the massage therapist, don't push so hard, or you're able to do a stretch that feels safe to you without injuring yourself further.
yeah, be loyal to be intimate and loyal with your body.
Yeah. It's funny, I was talking to some musician friends, and they were talking about a jazz player who I think he played piano. I can't remember who they were talking about, but through his whole life. And somebody asked him, like, well, how do you not have injuries? How do you not have repetitive stress? Because that's a big issue in music. And he said, well, every day I wake up and I tell my hands that I love them.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. And they all were like, that's silly, that's crazy. But I really, I thought about it because I was like, no, that's really valid. Because if you really love something, you would never hurt it. You would never put it in a place of pain. Muscles are
beautiful.
Yeah, isn't it?
Yeah.
Isn't it beautiful?
Beautiful. Yeah. And very, very, it encompasses, it encapsulates what you said now about moving slower, moving easier, 10%. It sounds counterintuitive to our Western striving.
Yeah.
But
the process itself can be really frustrating for people because they don't feel like they're making any progress. But the progress is that you're safe, right? The progress is that you're not going into fight or flight mode. And it could take.
Can you give these chronic pain sufferers hope that they can be healed with a modality like you were talking about?
Yeah, I've seen it happen. Where people, healed is a big word, right? Like we can't always take away something that your body has already accepted, right? But what you can do is release the tension around it, right? You can also bring your body into a place of more calmness, being in that parasympathetic nervous state more, which is that rest and digest mode, means that you're not going to go into flare-ups. So if you're in chronic pain, it's people with chronic pain syndromes or any sort of autoimmune disorders, especially, that the problem isn't so much the actual autoimmune disorder. There's management to it, but the real problem is not flaring up, right? Like you want to keep those flare-ups under bay for as long as you can.
Yeah.
So
sleeping.
Yeah. So being able to keep those flare-ups at bay, that's the key. That's the key for sure.
Wow, Carrie, this is so beautiful. I'm really, really very grateful for your generous YouTube channel and your teachings. You really contribute so much. I know it because I felt it on my body. I could feel it in my body, as the song says. Thank you so much,
Oh, you're so welcome. You're so welcome.
and I wish you all the best, joy and health.
To you too.
Thank you.
Mhm.